All right, we're going to shift back to South Carolina for a little bit. So Micah Feinstein is our next speaker, and his presentation is entitled Main Street, South Carolina, Small Town Revitalization Efforts. And his double majoring in urban studies and international studies, and his project advisor is Dr. Deborah Auriffeille from the Department of Sociology. Micah?
All right, cool, so we'll just get started here. So an overview of this presentation. So I'm going to start out with how I sort of arrived at this topic and developed an idea of what to cover. Then we'll shift to an overview of history of small towns and urbanization throughout South Carolina. We'll then talk about the origins of Main Street, South Carolina, and its sort of change over time, all the way up to the present. I'll talk about the case studies that I've covered for this project and a little bit about the interview process. And then we'll briefly touch on, going forward into the future, some recommendations for Main Street, South Carolina to continue improving small towns throughout the state. So background, I've always been interested in cities. At first I thought I was really interested in big cities, and it was through traveling that I realized that I have a passion for small towns. And I think a lot of times we are really interested in going to the New York cities of the world when we don't go an hour down the road to Beaufort, which is super gorgeous, has a lot of amazing history and natural amenities as well. And so I found an opportunity with an organization called Main Street, South Carolina. And I wanted to measure the impact of Main Street, South Carolina, and I had to sort of discover how. So I conducted lots of interviews and wanted to sort of touch on the history of the program, how it's changed over time, and where it can go into the future. So first of all, has anybody heard of Main Street, South Carolina? A little bit. Oh, great. Okay, cool. So about 2 out of 10-ish, which is a pretty good number. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll all be familiar and interested in visiting some small towns in our state. So I'll talk about the history first. So a lot of towns in South Carolina developed as the county seat for their county, and so they were courthouse towns. A lot of these courthouse towns had really architecturally significant courthouses, some of which were designed by Robert Mills, who actually attended the College of Charleston and has built a lot of buildings around Charleston. So the image on your left is in Kingstree, South Carolina, and this is Lancaster, South Carolina. So the majority of South Carolina towns actually developed through the proliferation of railroads in the state. So this is a railroad map of the state, and they sort of developed like Central here. One-sided main streets facing right onto the tracks here. And actually the name of Central, South Carolina is because it's the central point between Atlanta and Charlotte on the railroad. So that is sort of how it developed. And there are a lot of towns that just developed from depots and spurs off railroad lines. And just because of the sheer convenience of being located right on a railroad line. There are also some towns in South Carolina that developed as mill towns, or a lot of towns that were already pre-existing that grew much bigger during the textile boom during Reconstruction. So Lawrence, South Carolina had a giant cotton mill. If anyone's been to Greenville, right in the heart of their downtown, nice. They have a converted old cotton mill that was transformed into sort of an event space. But these types of mills were all throughout the state, but especially in the northwestern parts of the state, all along navigable rivers that helped sort of fuel the cotton industry and the textile industry. So this shows the growth of small towns in our state over time. So I want to point your attention in a couple places here. So sorry, this is a little bit blurry. I'm sure folks online really just can't see it, but we'll talk on this really briefly. So these small dots right here are the county seats. Notice that they're right in the center of their counties, and so that was intentional, of course. And so over time, growth has gone north and west in the state. So we've seen a push north and west, and that's continued even today. Lots of suburban growth in Spartanburg County, Greenville County, all around there. So lots of growth north and west. And then you see growth along these railroad lines. So this is a railroad line right here. You'll see those little dots popping up all around on these lines right here. So that just sort of shows the urban growth over time. So small towns in South Carolina sort of reached their heyday around the turn of the 20th century. And so these images show electrification in Florence. South Carolina had a sort of delayed electrification process that centered mostly in urban areas because it was most convenient to electrify urban areas, more bang for the buck for the regional utility companies. But so once towns became electrified, they became real centers of activity, even more so than they were before. So we have some cars popping up in the 1920s. We have some wealth from the cotton mills, from the railroads. So we are seeing some urban growth, and with that, lots of cultural developments, movie theaters, things like that popping up throughout towns in South Carolina, drugstores, yada, yada, yada. So we reach our peak, then the Great Depression hits. In South Carolina was a little bit economically depressed even before the Great Depression. We just got a little head start there. But we just, small towns sort of continued declining throughout the middle of the 20th century. And a lot of that decline was accelerated by the proliferation of highways. So whereas in the 19th century, the railroads were the primary mode of commerce for transportation. In the 20th century, the highways really took over and became the main thoroughfares for trade and commerce over time. So towns that were located adjacent to highways ended up benefiting in the form of higher populations and attracting more businesses. So if I'm an international company, I'm going to look to locate near an interstate. So I'm going to bring my jobs to Florence or Columbia, or up to Greenville. And I'm not going to come down here to Beaufort, where it's really, really difficult to reach. I'm not even going to go to Sumter, which is about 20 miles off the highway, right? It's just not worth it for me. And so those towns lose out on jobs, and they don't get a lot of the advantages that highways brought. So we also have the growth of malls. This is Richland Mall, right near me in Columbia. So cars became super prominent during the middle of the 20th century, again with these highways, and then we have suburban-oriented development. So we have people moving from small towns as opportunities decline in small towns. They're moving to these suburbs, which are new and exciting and car-dependent, and they're going and shopping at these malls with these giant cleared parking lots, heading in, leaving their cars in this giant space here. So businesses on Main Street, a lot of the mainstays, the anchor stores that have been there for decades, eventually end up moving to the malls because that's where the consumers are headed. That's where small town residents had headed to the suburbs. So, yeah. So this was not, these phenomenon, this boom and bust, was not exclusive to South Carolina. Actually, this was a nationwide trend, felt really strongly in agricultural states especially. So places like South Carolina and places throughout the Midwest and the South really felt strong small town decline here. And so the National Trust for Historic Preservation began as an organization to protect individual landmarks, but they noticed over time that they needed to develop a more comprehensive and aggressive sort of preservation approach. So they launched a pilot program in the Midwest that evolved into a Main Street program and was designed to protect and nurture commercial districts in small towns around the country. So it begins in the 1970s and spreads nationally in 1980 with some funding from the federal government, and the program spreads to be housed in individual states. Right. So Main Street has a 4-point approach, and that's something that has been really valuable in its growth over time. So this was a marketable thing for small towns to get behind and techniques to put in place in their towns. So real quickly, the 4 points are organization, promotion, design, and economic restructuring, a really comprehensive approach to downtown revitalization for small towns and even for bigger cities as well. And so these 4 points are really valuable for small towns because a lot of small towns don't have large planning departments as you would find in a big city. So focusing on these 4 points allows a department of one and some volunteers to conduct all of the work of a larger planning department with fewer resources, but with sort of the drive to want to revitalize their downtown. And it boils it down into the key points that you need for successful revitalization. So Main Street, South Carolina was established in 1983, at first as the Downtown Development Association. And it was for the purpose of implementing the Main Street program in South Carolina. So it grew really rapidly because people in South Carolina really wanted to try out this Main Street program that they had seen other states been so successful with. So we had nearly 20 members by 1990 and 35 members by 2000, and became sort of the envy of a lot of other different programs. We had 5 full-time staff members working at the statewide level in the early 2000s. But then by the early 2000s, we had a pretty conservative state house that slashed a lot of funding. And so Main Street lost out on a lot of funding, and it just led to a series of budget cuts, retirements, and the staff of 5 went down to a staff of 1. And then with the economic recession of 2008, Main Street was really just sort of gone by the wayside. But they rebranded to Main Street, South Carolina, and membership sort of still plummeted until around 2018, when Jenny Boulware, my boss for my internship, came and helped really turn around the program and has it really looking up. So has anybody been to any of these places? Probably many of you have been to some of them. Yeah, cool. So these are all of the communities in Main Street now. It's around 25. We're now in 4 tiers of membership. So we have accredited programs, which are our high flyers who have really done a great job of implementing the Main Street approach, who have years of experience in doing economic revitalization in their towns, and then down on the list. So this 4-tiered approach really helped encourage a lot of small towns to rejoin our program, many of which had dropped out earlier. So giving them something to work towards accreditation helped incentivize people to rejoin the network. So for this project, I conducted 12 or so hour-long interviews and with a wide range of Main Street stakeholders. So everyone from my boss to former Main Street staff, to local program directors in the 3 case study towns, to the mayor of Lawrence, South Carolina, director of North Carolina's Main Street, just a lot of different folks who are involved with Main Street to gain their insights. I focus on 3 case studies, Florence, Greenwood, and Lawrence, who are 3 of our accredited programs and some of our best programs in the state. And so my takeaways are that Main Street, South Carolina towns have navigated COVID relatively well. So especially these accredited programs, I talked to 3 towns. Overall, they had only lost collectively 2 businesses due to COVID-19. So they, through Main Street resources and support from the Main Street network, they were able to really be aggressive in applying for grants and loans and helping their small businesses navigate the pandemic, transitioning to e-commerce and that sort of thing. Membership reform and accountability encourage programs to come back. I talked about that. And in addition to the 4-point approach, the value of Main Street is the network of fellow professionals working in these small towns throughout the state. I mentioned those 25 communities. They all support each other. If somebody is looking to buy benches for their downtown. They will post on our network, our Facebook page, or our email listserv to get recommendations for bench providers throughout the state, who gives the best rates, that sort of thing. So it's a really helpful network. Jenny Boulware has been an amazing force and has single-handedly sort of rejuvenated and expanded the program. And e-commerce and social media are growing in importance for small towns. And Main Street is growing its popularity back, and we're getting back to where we once were as the envy of other programs. So going forward, the case study cities talked about further segmenting the 4 membership tiers, really making it clear what the difference is between all 4. Support structures for towns in the upstate versus the low country, so maybe having an individual coordinator for each of those 2 regions who can travel more easily between those instead of just one person in charge of the entire state. Succession planning, so a lot of the knowledge of Main Street is housed in people's brains, so really writing that down and making sure that there's succession planning as people inevitably leave. And program visibility and recognition at the statewide level. Getting back to where more than 2 out of 10 people will know what Main Street, South Carolina is, where the governor's office is aware of all the great things that we're doing, where the legislature values Main Street, South Carolina. Cool. And most importantly, and this is really what I'm pushing for, and the end of my argument is that that Jenny needs additional funding and resources in order to grow Main Street to the next level. She's done an incredible job at attracting more communities back, but in order to take it even further, let's get some additional support staff. So I hope to present to the Municipal Association and make that, get that ball rolling, hopefully. Yeah, cool, and that's it. So any questions?
Will we be passing the hat around or something for collections on that?
Yeah.
Great job. Questions?
Yeah.
So, are there specific criteria for
Yes.
a town to be involved with MSSC? For example, if MSSC did a great job in Sumter and Sumter became a city the size of Charleston, would
Right.
they no longer be eligible to participate?
Yeah, great question. So the typical Main Street community is between 5,000 and 50,000. We do have towns as small as 500 and as large as like 60, but the vast majority are within that range. So Greenville actually was a Main Street community up until the early 2000s, around 2005. And Greenville, of course, is like the champion of urban development in South Carolina, really forward-thinking urban planning. And so they sort of graduated out of need for the program. They have a full, planning staff. They have a tourism and promotion department where they don't really need, they've grown past it. Yeah, they've grown out of it. Yeah.
You had to identify 1 or 2 towns that are in the program now. Which one's the next group?
Which one's what?
That's Greenville.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, that's a good question. Florence is doing some really amazing stuff. They have a growing staff and a lot of buy-in. Yeah, and Lawrence is, so as population growth moves to the upstate, Lawrence is getting some of that runoff as people are sort of settling further away from Greenville. And so Lawrence is in a prime position to attract a lot of new residents, and they have a really cute commercial district around a courthouse square. So it's a really cool place as well.
Hey Micah,
Yeah.
looking at the next 10 or 20 years, what do you think might be the next railroad, the next highway, the next sort of driving force of growth and development? Is it definitely an infrastructure thing? Could it be a digital thing? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Elon Musk would like something to say about that. Yeah, I think the e-commerce vein will be really, really crucial because some of these business owners in small towns don't even use banks. Like, they are all cash businesses. They are, have been doing things the way they've done them for decades, right? And so one of those lasting impacts of COVID will be the curbside pickup kind of thing. Will be the quick order, place your order, and in 5 minutes go pick it up. And so I think that will be a top priority for our businesses going forward. Yeah.
So the pandemic has changed, the way people think about living. Seeing an exodus from larger cities to smaller cities. In the discussions, have you come up with any plans to try and attract people living between the larger cities and the smaller towns?
Right. Yeah. So we North Carolina mentioned that they're a couple years ahead of our program in terms of they have a big staff and about 50 members in their statewide program, and so their director talked to me a little bit about that, of saying, like, we're seeing people move from New York, from San Francisco, and settling in a town of 10,000 people, getting a huge, a nice fixer-upper, and living their best life. So I think that's definitely on the pike, and I know my boss is certainly aware of it. I'm not sure specific strategies that we have in place yet, but yeah, it's definitely something to capitalize on in sort of attracting digital nomad kind of people, for sure.
Definitely.
Any other questions?